Hello and you're welcome to the Big Tech Show with me, Adrian Weckler. Now, January means dark days, cold weather, isolation, and it's a time when people naturally look for something to cling to, a new opportunity, a change of life, and that means it's one of the most vulnerable times for those at risk from romance scammers. Now, this is also called romance baiting or sometimes even pig butchering because it refers to the idea of fattening a victim before butchering it. Interpol doesn't like that term, but it is called that sometimes. And it's a particularly cruel, cold operation that mainly targets middle-aged women. And it's on the rise in Ireland with a number of recent arrests, the latest of which was this week. Detective Superintendent Michael Crine of the Garda National Economic Crime Bureau. Talk us through what happens generally in this scam.
Yeah, good morning. And this is a type of crime which probably has been around for years. We call it romance fraud. And nowadays, the vast majority of it is online. It's on dating apps where people go on dating apps and they're matched with somebody, and that person, over a period of time, uses all sorts of social engineering scams and manipulation and exploitation, and eventually starts asking for money to pay bills and pay different fees and expenses. And in more recent years, we've seen, you mentioned the term pig butchery. That's a term the criminals themselves use. And that is where, after a period of time, the suspects now start offering the victim investment advice. They talk about knowing somebody that works in the cryptocurrency area and they've made a lot of money, and they reluctantly, shall we say in inverted commas, allows the victim to invest as well, and then over time encourages the victim to invest more and get some friends to invest. And it's fraud, it's a scam.
So typically in the stuff that you have seen, how does it get from meeting or connecting with somebody on a dating site to offering them an investment opportunity in crypto? There must be quite a journey from one to the other.
Yes, it can go on for many, many months, very slowly. It starts with a match being made. And I suppose if you talk about red flags, one of the first red flags for any potential victim listening is where the male, we'll call it the male, the suspect, wants to go off messaging, off onto, we'll say, WhatsApp or some other messaging app. So that means they're not being monitored by the company.
So that's the first thing of trust, isn't it? Because if you ask somebody to go off site on a dating app and you go onto WhatsApp or iMessage or text, to do that, if I'm the person who's being asked to do that, that's a leap of faith really in our relationship, right?
It is, and it's something that's done very early, and it's because the tech companies, in fairness, are doing their best to stop this. They have all sorts of algorithms because these guys are using scripts, so it's the same words, the same language, the same every terminology has been used in many different conversations by different people, so they can pick that up if it's on the app.
When you say terminology and scripts, I mean, is there something that comes to mind? Is there something typical that you're thinking of there?
Oh, yeah, it starts, they all have the same, shall we say, backstory or very similar backstory. And suspects are 50s to 60s, that kind of late middle age, we'll call them. Usually American, usually working in a very important, responsible job. They may be a doctor or an engineer, working in a war zone, working with a charity. So you have that type of background. They usually say they're divorced.
This is the scammer you're talking about, is it?
Yeah, they'll say they're divorced. They'll say they're widowed. They'll have adult children. So they nearly all follow that same kind of pattern, that same kind of backstory. And that's the scripts. And then they have the questions they ask. So again, another red flag early on is they're asking you so many what you think is simple questions. You know, they'll ask you about, well, what holidays have you been on recently? But how you answer that question tells them whether this is worth putting the effort in. So if you say, oh God, I have no money to go on holidays, I haven't been abroad in 20 years, I'm penniless, they'll think, what's the point? Whereas if you say, well, I was on a cruise in the Mediterranean last year and I was a crew, they'll say, okay, this person could have money. So maybe it's worth staying in the game, shall we say. So all the questions which seem very innocent are all building up a profile of you. That's the victim. They're building up a profile of you and whether you are worth putting the months into this.
And Michael, is this the reason why so many of the victims are middle-aged? Because that is typically an age profile where they might have, maybe they've got their mortgage almost paid off, maybe they have disposable income.
Yes, and again, this type of crime really exploded over COVID because people weren't able to go out and socialise and weren't able to do the normal ways of meeting people. So more and more went online. Perhaps there was a lot of people now more middle-aged online, not used to being online, not used to being on these dating apps as well. But yes, traditionally people perhaps that's older have more money. They may have more disposable income. They may be retired. They may have been separated and got money. They may have got an insurance payout. They may, the chances of them having paid their mortgage are higher. Their kids are grown up and are gone, so they're living at home alone as well. So there is with the victims, there's a sense of, certainly during COVID, was of isolation, social isolation as well there.
So loneliness might be an issue, because when I think of someone who's middle-aged, I mean, I'm middle-aged. I'm in my 50s now. And maybe I like to think of myself as being savvy. We all like to think of ourselves as being savvy. And we like to think of ourselves as having experience. But this idea of isolation and maybe loneliness, if you're separated or if you're divorced or if you're single and you're at home alone, maybe you're just a bit more vulnerable.
Yes, certainly. And certainly during COVID, I would say that was a huge issue because people were not able to go out and not able to meet their friends and not able to go to the clubs they were involved in, not go to the social events. So more and more, and you weren't allowed to have visitors into your home or you weren't allowed to go. So there was more and more of that during. And I would think a lot of victims got used of these sort of apps as well. And these suspects, they will try to come across as the perfect match. So if the victim talks about, I give the example of, if you say you're interested in 18th century French poetry, when he comes back to you in a day or two's time, he will have done his research on 18th century French poetry and will be able to talk to you about it. He will never be able to talk to you about it straight back, because there will always be a gap in because he goes and does his research and how to answer the questions as well.
It's quite an investment in time here, isn't it? And I mean, the scale of this is rising. I saw one figure from the Gardaí that over a 5-year period to last February, it was at least €7 million was taken in these scams from at least 245 Irish victims, with one unnamed victim losing €450,000 over 18 separate scam transactions.
Yes, over in the last 6 years, since 2019, there's been 8.6 million, just over 8.6 million reported stolen. Last year, we saw an increase in this for unknown reasons. In 2019, we had 42 victims made report. In 2020, it was 46, 21, 87, 22, 74, 23 was 38, which was a good reduction. But then last year, that almost doubled. It went up 57% to 65 victims, where 1.4 million was stolen. So,
any theories as to why, Michael?
I would no. It may be just a case that the reporting has gone up.
Right.
This is always this is underreported for various reasons, and it could be a case that there is more knowledge out there. We do a lot more over the last number of years, a lot more media awareness about this, and people are more aware that this is actually a crime. Because in my view, there's three main reasons why they don't report these things. One is embarrassment. They're embarrassed for many reasons. It could be personal reasons. It could be professional reasons. It could be just kind of.
I mean, look, let's call a spade here. It's mortification. If I'm being taken for 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 euro from somebody who I thought I was being romantically involved with, I would be mortified.
But you're a victim. This is a crime. This is a deception. There's no doubt here. This is a deception. These people are telling you lies, and because of that, and the goodness and the trust you have, you're offering to help them, or you're taking their advice on board. This is no different to, shall we say, meeting a professional con man, we'll call him, and he's offering you investment advice, and you invest your money in a certain way, and it's gone. it's the same concept. It's just it's done online, and it's still, some victims don't actually even believe they've been a victim of crime because they think, oh, I sent the money, I offered it, but they develop, or they engineer the circumstances where you make the offer out of the goodness of your heart. And then there's the view, well, what's the point? What can the Gardaí do about this? This money is gone, it's gone abroad.
I mean, that's a fair thing. That's a fair point that victims might think. I mean, is any of the money ever recovered?
It can be very difficult. It is. But what you're doing when you're reporting is you're helping us identify, we say, the trends and the MOs and how they operate, so we can give this type of advice out to the next victims. But we can also identify the bank accounts where the money goes to. And we can forward, and we do forward it all the time, that information to other jurisdictions to say, listen, this person here is laundering money from crime. So you may be preventing, and you will be preventing, definitely preventing other people becoming victims. And if people don't report, we don't know what's happening, we don't know how it happened, and we can't give the advice to other people. But unfortunately, recovering the money is difficult.
I think that you or the Gardaí previously have pointed out that sometimes victims are married.
Yes, they can be. They can be married. They can be. Some are separated. Some are widowed.
I mean, that must make it much harder to report, though. Surely,
it can, absolutely. But people report things in confidence to the guards all the time. When you go into a Garda station to make a report, if it's your local Garda station, you can ask to speak to somebody in private, and you will be taken into a room where somebody will sit down and talk to you in private. So what you report to the guard, nobody else needs to know or knows about it. Of course, if you've lost a huge amount of money, you have to explain that to a spouse or children or something like that. But we have victim liaison officers, we have victim engagement officers. You're a victim of a crime. It's as simple as that. It's like any other crime you report.
Where are these scammers? Where do they tend to be based?
That's a good question. We would love to know that. A lot of them are based abroad, but there are ones based here in Ireland. I did an investigation here in 2020 where a lady lost a substantial, well over €200,000, and the fraudsters were based in Ireland. They were arrested. We identified them. They were arrested. They were prosecuted. They received jail sentences. But they were based. Two of them were based in the Dublin 15 area, and one was based in County Meath. Yeah,
and
very close.
Do you remember what the particulars were in that case? Like what did they do, or how did they?
Yes, I remember the case well. Yeah, it was a case where the victim was during COVID for about a period of 6 or 8 months, and she was offered opportunity to make investments as well, and invested a lot of money, and the money, most of it transferred abroad. We recovered some property which had been purchased with some of the money, but it was only a small percentage of it that we recovered, unfortunately. But we recovered, I think, about 30, goods worth about 30 grand, with 40 grand, we'll say. But interestingly, when we searched the suspect's house on the morning of the search, one of the suspects was actually logged into the dating site under the persona they had created and talking to another victim. And we discovered from analysis of his devices, he was in conversation, I think, with 8 other victims in Ireland at the same time. And they were at different stages in the process. We immediately took steps to identify these ladies, and contacted them to say, listen, we believe, we know this person is a fraudster. Please don't send any money. If you have sent money, we will help you recover it. Luckily, none of them had reached that stage in the process of sending money. But we found the scripts they were using, the conversations was the same in relation to the whole 8 different people. The other 8 victims, potential victims, were all very similar in age and profile as well.
Now, you're saying scripts, so that suggests that there's an organizational quality to all of this, that maybe it's not just random individuals.
Yes, this type, what I'm talking about, is organized crime. This is worldwide. There is it's huge sums of money been stolen worldwide by organized crime groups. We have another investigation ongoing at the moment where 16 victims across Europe, one made a report to her police in her own country. The police there tracked the money. It came to an account in Ireland. They asked for our assistance. We did our inquiries and identified 15 other female names, we call them, had sent money to these guys' accounts. Of them, they were in something like 7 or 8 different countries across Europe. We go back to the police. Please identify these are potential victims, romance frauds. Most of them did confirm it. Not all would make complaints. That it is very organized. It can be very organized crime. Now, that is not to say there aren't individual fraudsters operating online as well on different social media apps where they're talking to different victims at the same time. But I would say where the scripts are being used, where you see that backstory of the oil rig worker, the doctor, the surgeon, whatever, that is organized crime, where you see the scripts.
And is it difficult to catch these guys? Do you have to rely on people reporting the crime to you?
In a lot of cases, yes, because otherwise we don't know what's happening. But we do come across it. As in the other case, we received information or request for assistance from a police force abroad. There were suspects who were here. We believe they were most probably just laundering the money on behalf of the criminal organisation, as against conducting the frauds themselves. We have quite a number of people before the courts and charged in relation to laundering the money on behalf of the criminal organisations who are committing these online frauds. But
Michael, can I just ask you about that? When you say laundering, you're not talking about mules here, are you? Because we hear all these news reports about third-level students who are kind of tricked into holding a certain amount of money in exchange for, €200 or something. Is this a higher level of laundering you're talking about?
It would be both. You would have the money mule as well, because if when a money mule agrees to become a money mule and hands their bank account over to the person, they do not know where that money is going to come from. They have no idea. They have no control of where that money comes from. So yes, you do have money from these type of crimes going into the money mule's account, but you also have it going into accounts set up by members of the organisation using false identities and false documents, and you have it then going into their own personal accounts at times as well. So it's a bit of everything. The banks, again, are very good. They will sometimes identify who these, and they report that to us as well, because the victim will just say the UK, loses money, realises it's a fraud. They'll get their bank to do a recall. The recall comes to the bank in Ireland. And then the Bank in Ireland will always report that to the Gardaí that they believe this account has been used to launder money. We also come across intelligence from arrests. We arrest suspects and we analyse their devices and other intelligence and information. And from that, we identify people who are laundering the money or who are committing these frauds as well.
Is that issue of being mules, is that as common as we read about? I've seen reports suggesting that it's, hundreds of kids at any one time are doing it.
I would unfortunately say it's thousands. And there's certainly been thousands reported over the last number of years. Again, exploded during COVID. We have one major investigation ongoing into that. We can identify well over 1,300 people who have performed or did acts to enhance the criminal organisation. The vast majority, over 1,000 of them, are money mules. Again, during COVID, this exploded online. The recruitment all went online, whereas heretofore it was probably more through personal interactions with criminals, but now it went online. So the money mule is essential, not just in romance frauds, but all online frauds. So where we say you get your text message, your smishing text message, you click on a link, it brings you to a cloned website, and the fraudster from that gets your personal data, is able to take over your account. They will add a beneficiary, which is a mule account, and they'll transfer the money into a mule account. In those type of frauds, the mule account really has a very short window of working, shall we say, because the banks very quickly identify that's where the victim's money is gone. They will shut it down. They report it to the guards. So the fraudsters need new accounts all the time. So yes, unfortunately, money mules, despite all the appeals we've made, all the awareness we've done, not just me, but crime prevention officers all over the country, young people, and not just always young people, but young people are still taking the risk of becoming a money mule. You wonder at times, do they appreciate what they're doing is actually a crime?
Yeah, because it's seen as easy money, probably.
It's seen, that is how it's sold to them. Do you want to make easy money? And that's how it's sold on website, on social media apps, and messages go around. Do you want to make easy money? No, no, and we all know there isn't really any easy money to be made out there. But the ramifications for the young person who becomes a money mule are absolutely enormous.
Yeah, because that's prosecution, maybe conviction, permanent record, traveling abroad.
Yes, the conviction, like the conviction for a start, it carries a potential 14 years prison sentence. Money laundering is an extremely
14
serious
years.
crime. 14 years, yeah, and it's also a conviction under the Criminal Justice Money Laundering and Terrorism Financing Act. So that conviction on your record has ramifications for travel, for terrorist watch lists, for visas to work, for vetting, for future employment, contracts, everything
Yeah,
like that.
I'm not sure the gravity of that is fully appreciated by some of the people who are casually flicking through their Telegram apps or wherever it
Yeah.
is they're making contact here.
And the point I make is you will be caught. Because it's your bank account, it's your address, it's your passport, that was used to set it up, it's your um, parents' probably bank statement or phone bill, utility bill that was used to set up the account. So you will be caught.
So there's a high conviction rate, is there?
There is, yeah. There's a high a lot. There's hundreds of money mules have been prosecuted all over Ireland in the past number of years, and there's a lot more in the pipeline. There's a lot of them were juveniles when it happened, so they get dealt with under the juvenile diversion program. If they fit that criteria, they can be dealt with under the juvenile diversion program as well. But if if you live in a small town in Ireland and you're prosecuted, the guards will search your house, they'll seize your device, you'll be arrested, you'll be prosecuted in the local courts. The local media will pick up on it, obviously. So you might have your picture in the local media. In a local small town in Ireland, that's never going to be forgotten. Down the road when you want to be the treasurer of your local GAA club in 20 years' time, somebody's going to say, wasn't that the guy that was done for money laundering back years ago? So it's something, it's a very serious conviction to have under the Criminal Justice Money Laundering Terrorism Financing Act of 2010.
It certainly is, and I'm glad you've alerted us to the full ramifications of it there. Just in case, just to go back to the romance baiting, if you find yourself caught up or you suspect that you might be involved in this, what are the steps you should do?
Well, first of all, is stop communicating. But don't destroy the message because the evidence is there, but you stop communication. If you have sent money, call to your bank immediately, ask them to do recall, ask them to stop, change your passwords, change your codes, on your online banking apps, change everything like that, and stop communicating with them. And don't fall for, you'll get a new message saying, I'm sorry, someone took over my, some kind of story. It's a scam. We see with cryptocurrency frauds and scams, a new one that's coming is where they offer recovery services. So in 3-6 months' time, you'll get contacted saying, we're able to recover partial of your money, but it's going to cost you, or we're policing country, wherever, and we've recovered it, but you need to prove it's yours by sending us X.
God, it's relentless.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So you can be re-victimized by these guys over and over again.
I read a particularly cynical one. The BBC a few weeks ago did an investigation into a romance baiting scam, and they followed the scam through. They engaged with a scammer and followed it through, and then they called the scammer out after 6 weeks or something. And the scammer's tactic was to change the script and switch to say that they had been kidnapped and their parents were being held hostage and they had to do it, and could the person help them, that they were actually the victim. And that itself was another part to the scam.
Yes, it's all re-victimization, and they have your contact details, unfortunately, and they will come back again and will come back again if they think a certain person is, you can get money out of them. Yeah, you need to be wary. That's the one advice I'd always give people, is to be wary, not to jump into anything. With regard to cryptocurrency is one, or investment fraud. it's often, oh, this is your one opportunity. You must do this now. You will never get this opportunity again. And I always say is, you must ask yourself, first of all, well, why am I getting this opportunity? Why am I one person getting this opportunity? If you don't take it, you will not be any worse off. So take your time, talk to somebody you trust. If it's investment, especially in cryptocurrency, you need to do your research. You need to talk to somebody in investment, manage somebody who understands investment. Like investment in cryptocurrency, there's nothing illegal about it, but it does not suit everybody. It's as simple as that. So you need to take your time, talk to somebody you trust. In romance fraud, again, if you're in that scenario, this person seems absolutely wonderful and perfect. You have somebody hopefully you can trust and say, what do you think it is? That other person may hear this, may see something in the paper and say, oh my God, listen, let's just think about this for a minute, So that's the advice I would give to people.
Well, Detective Superintendent Michael Crine of the Garda National Economic Crime Bureau, thank you very much for explaining just the extent and the depth of this, and also for that advice on what to do if you suspect you're being caught up by this. John Smith was on audio for this podcast. JJ Clark produced it, and I'm Adrian Weckler. You've been listening to and watching The Big Tech Show, and we'll talk to you soon.